Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And I'm Pete.
So this is Ask Rob and Pete.
Yes, welcome to this very special episode of Ask Rob and Pete. You probably recognise that voice already. That is Pete Matthew from the Meaningful Money podcast. We are really glad to have him on the show today, and he's here to answer your personal finance questions as they relate to property. That's what Pete does so well. He's been doing it across his podcast and his YouTube channel for years, and now he's got a book coming out as well. It's called The Meaningful Money Handbook, and you can find out more at petesbook.com. Now, before we get to our first question, let's just have a quick recap of how you can send in a question of your own.
It remains super simple. You can go to thepropertyhub.net/ask. That's thepropertyhub.net/ask and leave your question there. You can do that via your mobile or your desktop. And you can pick up the phone and do it the old-fashioned way and call in on 013 808 0035. That's 013 808 0035. Normal rates apply. Right, let's get into the main event. We've had questions over the recent weeks that Rob and I are clearly unqualified to answer, but luckily we've got a man who's more than qualified. It's the wonderful Pete Matthew. So let's listen to our first question and get Pete on to give us some answers.
Hey Rob and Rob, I'm Lynsey from Brighton. I really love your podcast. All the stuff you guys put out has really helped me, so cheers for that. I've got a question actually that I'm hoping Pete can answer for me. I've got an investment property and I plan on buying some more over time. I find all the income and expenses really hard to keep track of. So I can see the mortgage payments go out and I get my rent come in from the agent, but that has fees and sometimes expenses deducted. So I'm really unsure of how to track it all and it feels like a bit of a mess. So how can I straighten it all out? Am I better off trying to make a spreadsheet, or maybe there are certain apps that can help? Basically, how can I clear all this up so it makes sense and it's easy to see where I'm going? It's all a bit overwhelming, to be honest. Anyway, look forward to hearing your answer. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you for the question, Lynsey. Pete, over to you.
Thanks, chaps, and great to be here. Always love talking to you guys and your audience. So, mastering the art of budgeting is a challenge, and I think that's what Lynsey is asking about. Straightening things out. She talks about spreadsheets and apps and all that sort of stuff. And when it comes to budgeting, I think the best advice I can give anybody is to make life as simple as possible. All right? I think we can all try and overcomplicate things, particularly in the world that we live in now of apps and all the sort of stuff that we can use. I think sometimes simple is best, and particularly when it comes to staying on top of your money day in, day out, week in and week out. So I think as far as Lynsey's concerned, the first thing that she should consider doing, if she isn't already, is keeping a separate account for the income from her property and the outgoings from it. So that would keep things nice and tidy. So literally a separate bank account, rather than having everything coming in and out of her ordinary current account, where, you know, she has to kind of separate it from her other day-to-day expenses and income, having it in its own pot. It sounds so obvious, that, doesn't it? But you'd be amazed how many people don't do that. I've lost count of the number of self-employed people I've spoken to over the years who just have everything in their ordinary current account, rather than simply going to the bank and opening up a separate bank account for the business. So I think that's the first thing I would definitely say that Lynsey should do. Budgeting and careful control of the day-to-day ins and outs of our money really is the core skill that underpins everything else. I think budgeting has got a reputation for being boring, but when you consider what it really is, it's impossible to find it boring, because budgeting, it really is the act of taking control over your money. It's about telling your money what it is going to do for you, rather than just letting it sort of waft over you and hopefully catch a little bit of it as it goes past. So I hope that I've sort of passed the question correctly. It just sounds like Lynsey needs some basic financial controls. So separate accounts for what she needs to keep on top of. And then she doesn't really need special tools. If you know your way around an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, then that might help you. The best kind of off-the-shelf tool I know for budgeting is called YNAB. That's YNAB. You Need a Budget. That's at ynab.com. It's a paid tool. I think it's an annual thing, but it's super cheap and absolutely fantastic. I've run my family finances on it for years now.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to know I'm doing the right thing, Pete. I use a separate bank account and a spreadsheet. I'm old school, keep it simple. But often the simple way is the best way. Okay, so next up, we've got Tim from Cardiff.
Hey Rob and Rob, Tim from Cardiff here. cheers for the podcast and other free stuff you guys are putting out there. It's been a massive motivation for my wife and I. My question for you guys, or Pete, is currently have 2 properties in my name. Just bought another one through my wife and I's limited company. We're hoping to buy more like it in the near future, but we're not too sure on the insurance side of things. Should we go just landlord insurance? Is life insurance a better option? Or should we be putting everything on one policy? Yeah, anyway, hope you can help. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. This is a great question. It's actually quite a lot of questions in one, really. Now, when it comes to insurance for your property, that's not really my field. I'm sure Rob and Rob know more about that than I do. Obviously, you should have buildings insurance. It's mandatory if you've got a mortgage. And I'm assuming there's such a thing as a landlord's insurance, which takes into account public liability and stuff like that. Rob and Rob, perhaps you guys can sort of come in at the end of this and just cover that. But my field, really, Tim, is about insurance, certainly for your family. So when looking at looking after your family, you need to start by considering the 3 main events which are likely to impact them. And that is your or your partner's early death. Second, critical illness. Those are your real nasties like cancer, heart attack, stroke, multiple sclerosis, things like that. Nasty, but which you are quite likely to survive and hence still be around to experience financial hardship yourself as well as the family. And then the third risk, if you like, is being unable to work for whatever reason. Maybe you just have an extremely debilitating bout of depression, or you really, really put your back out. So those are the 3 things: early death, critical illness, and income protection. And the main impact of each of them really is the loss of your ability to earn a living. Now, with property income, it may not be directly dependent on your ability to work to earn it. Obviously, you've got the asset earning for you. But maybe if you're not around or you can't keep up with your duties as a landlord, you want to provide something for your family. So think about what the impact of those 3 events would have, or what the impact would be on your particular circumstances. What would be the financial impact if you were to die? Do you have a spouse or a partner? Could they look after the property portfolio for you? Stuff like that. What if you are just very poorly and can't keep up with the work that you have to do as landlord? Consider the impact of these things. Now, as far as insurance is concerned, you could consider taking out term life insurance for the amount of your mortgages. It's cheap as chips, particularly if you're young and healthy. Just that would ensure that your mortgages are paid off if you die. You could get that insurance written in trust. You should really get it written in trust so that it pays out quickly. Choose your trustees very wisely, okay, because they were the ones that would have to administer things if you die. It should go without saying, but for God's sake, make a will. None of us like to think about what will happen after we die, but we do need to. As financially responsible adults, we need to think about this stuff and engage with it. So make a will if you haven't done already. You can't take out income protection insurance based on rental income, but you can on earnings from a limited company. So it's a little bit of a fine line, particularly if it's a property company. I would argue that it makes sense to seek specialist help on that. The last thing you want to do is to take out some kind of insurance and pay it for years and then find out that you can't claim on it because of the specifics of your situation. So look for a specialist protection advisor. The guys at lifesearch.co.uk generally do a very good job of this. They're specialists in this field, and if you outline your particular situation to them, they'll be able to help you. So in short, Tim, consider the impact of the worst happening to you, the impact on your family, the impact on your property business, and insure accordingly. And for God's sake, make a will.
Wow, what a fantastic answer. Thank you, Pete. So much great advice in there. Tim, that answers your question and then some. Just to touch on what Pete mentioned about landlord insurance. Yes, that's exactly right. What's commonly called landlord insurance is a bundle of your buildings insurance, which you really must have, along with a couple of other bits like public liability. Loads of different options. You can go direct, you can go through brokers. Like all insurance, there's loads of options, and you don't just want to be going for the cheapest. It's not the most exciting thing you'll ever do, but it's worth spending a little bit of time reading into what it covers, making sure you're comfortable with it, and making sure that you're covered for an adequate amount. So you have then got genuine peace of mind. If anything genuinely terrible really does happen, then you will be covered. So Tim, there you go. Hope that helps.
Well, we've had an insight into just a glimpse of Pete's knowledge. And of course, if you want to get more of Pete, and let's face it, who wouldn't, you can go to the Meaningful Money podcast, but also you can get it in the form of his brand new book. If you want to pick up a copy, and you probably should, you want to go to petesbook.com. Personal finance is so similar to property investment that many people feel overwhelmed, and there's so much chatter and talk out there that people don't know what to do. But the great thing about Pete's book is it just gives you everything you need to know in one book. You've got it there. 98% of everything that any normal person would need to know is there, and you can just pick it up time and time again whenever you want a refresh of your knowledge. So if you're one of those people, and I know there's many out there who feel overwhelmed by this type of stuff, go and get a copy for a few quid. It's an investment well made. And another investment well made will be joining us next week on this podcast, because we're very lucky that we persuaded Pete to come back for another episode. And of course, we'll be back on the Property Podcast on Thursday. So until then, take care, have fun, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.